Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Hello. Hi. Thank you so much for coming, and welcome to our public consultation for the Independent Street Checks Review, otherwise known as carding. My name is Kika Ojo, and I am your facilitator for tonight. I see some people that I know in the room because I'm from Peel, so hello. Nice to be back home. I'm going to be really brief before inviting Justice Tulloch to the podium. First of all, let me just start by saying I want to welcome acknowledge the elders in the room, and thank you for coming, as well as everyone else, but I do like to especially acknowledge elders. As most of you know, this is a series of consultations across the community, and this is our Peel session. In a couple of weeks, we'll be in a number of other spaces, and will continue as we move through the province through to the end of April. In terms of housekeeping, we'd really appreciate if you ensure that you've signed up or registered basically your name and email with our staff, Roxana, at the door. This is our way of ensuring that we can communicate with you once the report is written and send you the report. Also that, and Danielle will be going over this, tonight is really about hearing from you and hearing your thoughts about the street checks regulation. And so, we hope that you'll engage fully in that process. But if you have something more to say, so if you leave tonight and you're like, I should have said this as well, or I have this other thought, or I know some people that should really weigh in on this conversation, we will be sort of sharing with you our social media platforms and our online platforms that will allow people to add their voice in a different format. So I think that's really important. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to invite Justice Tulloch up to greet you. Thank you.
I want to thank you, Kike, for your introductory comments. I also see the Mayor of Brampton, Your Worship, Mayor Jeffries, in the room. We want to acknowledge your presence. And to all of those that are here, I want to thank you for coming out. As you've heard from Kika, we're here to have a conversation. We're really here to speak about the issue of street checks, or the new regulation known as Regulation 5816 that the Government of Ontario introduced in 2016. Now, just before I get into my comments, I want to acknowledge that we're situated on the lands of the First Nations, who first stewarded this land for us. I begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, as well as the Iroquois and Huron-Wendat, the Ojibwe, and it's also the home of the Métis people. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. I also recognize the contributions of the Inuit and other Indigenous peoples, and we do this because I think it's important to recognize that, this land has been inhabited for thousands of years by others, and by so doing, they shaped and they strengthened this particular community. And they've been the steward of this province and this country as a whole. So we're grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land and in this territory. Now, by way of background, on June 7, 2017, I was appointed by the provincial government to lead a full and independent review of Ontario's Regulation 5816, which outlines Ontario's new rules on police street checks, which is a practice sometimes referred to as carding. I will be reviewing the content of the regulation and assessing whether police officers, chiefs of police, and police services boards are following it. I will also assess whether the regulation reflects the important goal of ensuring that police and public interactions are consistent, bias-free, and done in a way that promotes public confidence and protects human rights. Now, since my appointment, I have assembled a team of both legal experts as well as advisors to assist me, and we collectively have participated in a number of consultations across the province. Now, today's consultation marks the 5th of 12 public consultations within Ontario, and I intend to draw on what I've been learning from these consultations to write a report with recommendations on the regulation. Now, that report will be submitted to the government on November the 30th, 2018, and made available to the public sometime before January the 1st of 2019. Now, as background for your discussion, a street check is when a police officer asks someone for identifying information in a particular circumstance. The regulation applies if an officer asks you to identify yourself when they are looking into suspicious activities or investigating general criminal activity in the community. By contrast, the new rules under the regulation do not apply if the officer is talking to a driver during a traffic stop, arresting someone, or investigating a specific crime. The regulation outlines what an officer must do if they ask for your identification. The regulation also provides information on the storage of information that comes from street checks, mandatory training for all police officers on the new rules, and public reporting requirements. With that background in mind, I look forward to this evening. I want to emphasize once again that this review is fully independent. As you've heard, I think some of you know I sit as a Court of Appeal judge, so I'm not a member of any police service, nor do I represent the police, and we are not agents of the government either. So we're totally independent, and I want to hear your views, your perspectives, and your experiences. And, you know, we are appreciative of the fact that sometimes some of these experiences may be difficult, but it's critically important for us to have your views so that we can independently assess the situation that gives rise to this regulation. Now, meeting with you, like I said, is crucial, and it's a crucial part of this process. And again, I want to thank you all that are here for coming out to meet with us. And you can be assured that at the end of this process, your views will be heard, and it will be reflected in the ultimate report that will be written on this issue. So again, I thank you, and I look forward to your participation as we proceed.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Avant qu'on commence, j'ai une petite annonce en français. Si vous désirez un service d'interprétation vers le français, munissez-vous d'écouteurs. Vous les trouverez à l'arrière de la salle, près de la cabine où travaille notre interprète violin. So I just said if you'd like to listen in French, we've got a French translator at the back, and there's headsets right beside her, and you'll be able to grab a headset if that's the service that you're looking for. So thank you so much for coming. Welcome. My name is Danielle Dowdy, and I'm just going to go over the logistics of this evening as briefly as I can, because I'm very mindful of the time. As Justice Tulloch mentioned, we have been traveling across the province, and we still have a few more consultations to go. And so tonight is our consultation for the region of Peel. So thank you so much for coming out. And what we're doing at these sessions really is hearing from you, the public. And we want to get your views on the legislation. We want to know if the legislation has had an impact, if it's addressing the issues it was created to address. And we really want to get your input on some of the areas like data collection and training and other items that are touched on in the legislation. So this is the purpose of the discussion this evening. Just as a caveat or as a disclaimer, the review team, while it's very important for us to hear your stories and to get your experiences, we are actually not here to resolve any individual cases. So if you've got an issue, you've had a bad interaction and you want us to be able to resolve that on your behalf, that is not why we're here. We are here to listen to those stories and to have them inform our report and how we will arrive at our recommendations, but we are not here to resolve any individual cases. Okay? And so the way that this works this evening is, this is the brief intro. We're going to get right into the roundtable discussions. You'll see that there's notepads and pens and different and an engagement guide, and that's really to help drive your discussion. If you are sitting at a table by yourself or with a few of you, if you could join another table, because this is a group exercise, and this process works in a group setting. So you will need to, sorry to point you out, you will need to join another table or to find somebody to work with. So after, we're going to give you about 45 minutes to have that discussion, and then we're going to ask that you report back to us what was discussed at your tables. So any recommendations that your table came up with, we'd like to hear. Justice Tulloch will be up here at the front taking notes, as well as members of our team will be taking notes as well on all of the feedback that we hear this evening. And just so you know, we are on social media. So we are live tweeting this evening. If you do see any of us with a name tag here, or even with an actual camera like Peter Rehak, these pictures, they are for our social media and also for our report. If you, and we're also live streaming, so we're on Facebook Live right now, and the camera is just at the back of the room. You could wave, thank you. If you don't want to be on camera, avoid that one. But if you see us, taking pictures, that's what it's for. It's on our social media feed, so you're welcome to go on. We're tweeting under the hashtag StreetChecks, as you see up in the corner there. You're welcome to join the conversation, tweet your thoughts or anything, or if you want to see what it is that we're sharing, you can go on our Facebook page, on our Twitter account, on our Instagram. Probably tomorrow we do LinkedIn, because we usually kind of recap everything on LinkedIn there. But yeah, we're welcome to join the conversation with us. And with that, I wish you a wonderful discussion and a great evening. Thank you so much for coming.
Awesome, thank you. So for the remainder of the evening, we want to hear about all the wonderful conversations you've had, and your feedback to the questions that we've provided you with. We are going to move from table to table. Dave, my colleague who has the microphone, will move to the different tables. Hopefully you've selected someone to be the speaker for your table. It can be one or two people. We do have to manage time, as you can imagine. I'll just wait until you're ready. So we're in order to sort of respect the time, we will be managing how much time each table gets. Yeah. So it'll be under 5 minutes, somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes per table. And we just want to remind you again, so just a couple things. One, this is an independent review. So Justice Tulloch does not represent a party, a political party, does not represent the police. He is independent in his role. If you don't tell us, we can't write it down. So this process is really about hearing what the community has to say about this issue so that Justice Tullett can be well informed to do his report. And we can't resolve personal stories. So that's really, really important. And at the same time, we appreciate people offering their stories to provide context for what it is you want us to know, but understand that we can't resolve anything tonight. Also, with regards to questions you may have, the best we can do is note your questions, but we actually can't answer them because, again, we don't represent the police and we don't represent the government. So if you're posing the question, understand that you're posing the question as a point that you'd like us to note. Does that make sense? As opposed to expecting an answer in the moment. Okay? So I'm going to do my best to respectfully move us through with respect to time. And is there a table that would like to go first? Oh, you have one already. Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay?
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Mark Brown. I'm from the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists. So we had a number of topics, but for lack of time, I'm not going to go through all of them. But there's a couple of things that actually stood out. So we read the questions, and we got as far as number 4, and it talked about, are you aware of the regulations and so on, and we went to number 5. But what stood out is that each and every one of these questions assumes that we are in support of there being regulations. So I want to make it very clear. The practice of carding needs to stop. Regardless of the regulations, how it's regulated, how it's worded, what are the rules are, racism is engraved in Canadian society, and you cannot expect for any officer to execute their duties without being influenced to a certain extent by those biases. So that is a huge issue for us. The next issue that stood out is the issue of the historical data collection. This is a working class community, and many people have to do security checks, regular security checks, in order to get their jobs and to keep their jobs. And when these historical carding comes up, all of a sudden, they don't pass the security check. And that is an issue. And when you factor in that carding disproportionately affects racialized people, that's a problem. But getting back to the racism part of the equation, we're talking about racialized people here because we're in the Greater Toronto area. Mm-hmm. But the moment we move into another province or further up north, we, as racialized people, get replaced with Indigenous people crying the same thing. The practice needs to stop. So while we did go through the questions, we don't want there to be any misunderstanding that by answering those questions, we're agreeing with the practice. Mm-hmm. It's not. It needs to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Another table? Thank you.
Yes, hello. My name is Colbir Sidhu. I'm the assistant to MP Ruby Sahota, who is the MP for this riding here of Brampton North, with my colleague Karen, as well as a few other people from the community here. So we did answer the questions fairly generally, brainstormed as well. I'll start with question 1, which is basically, we have heard of carding, but where does the information go? Is this, database accessible through ATIP, access to information? Next, number 2, information gathering in general is what we think that it'd be a part of, getting to know the constituents in the area that the officers patrol. As far as awareness, we're fairly aware. We keep up with the news, and it's been in the news quite a bit, especially in Toronto. Number 4, do members of the public know enough about the regulations, et cetera? Well, the public should be made more aware of their rights of when they're interacting with the police, especially in these types of carding street check scenarios. Holding consultations regarding one's rights and holding consultations such as this nature on understanding the regulation are quite helpful. Providing information in different languages would be quite helpful as well, especially in this riding. Putting the onus on the police forces to provide the above mentioned as well. That'll help break down that negative stigma that so many of us have had or still do because of the interactions we've had. Moving on, number 5, do you think street checks carding have any benefits when it comes to public safety? Well, to a degree, yes, but we could use better tactics and for public safety purposes. Number 6, when should the police stop and talk to the people in the community? Well, interactions should not only be incidental. Let's increase a positive patrol presence. As a gentleman here mentioned, the police should be as familiar to you as your mailman or woman. In the past, you had a beat cop. He had 1 block or 2 blocks that they would patrol, and now that's not the case. We have different vehicles that they use, and they're very mobile. Moving on to number 9. We just kept generally speaking on the matter. So moving on to the receipts aspect, we understand that receipts are not actually consistent province-wide. Some of the information is required to be consistent, but we should have a template of every police force using the same template. Number 10, do you think this is an effective way to make sure that police follow the regulation? Well, yes. All receipts and information collected should be consistent in order to make them follow the regulations. That's as far as we got. We generally spoke further.
Thank you. Oh, Dave, right in front of you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike. I'm from the Boys and Girls Appeal. At our table, we had a wide variety of opinions. Not to go over whatever's already been going over, our big concern is the lack of information that's being provided to the general public. Through the Boys and Girls, we have a large demographic that can be perceived as being a targeted group. And we have a fantastic relationship with our mobilization team. The problem is they're just not getting out. So, for example, where are the officers tonight? The officers should be here, engaged, hearing to the general public and finding out what's going on. As mentioned, it's where does this data go? It's a lot of our youth, and I'm sure our older adults, they're intimidated, they're scared to give the information to the officers. So there needs to be clearer direction on what an officer can ask, what an individual can respond with, so that there's no misinterpretation of why this street check or investigation on the street is occurring. When the officers are in the community engaging, be it through the schools or just through activities, you get the boundaries. The boundaries are less, and there's less to overcome. And the area in which we are in, and we've talked about here, is with so many new immigrants to Canada, there's already the initial fear coming in. So we need our officers to be out there helping these individuals to understand what Brampton's about, what Canada's about, what they are doing here. And again, it comes down to the communication. The more they can engage with us, the more they can talk with us, that's where we need to go. Good?
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Latanya Grant. Some of you may know me, some of you may not. Question number 1, have you heard of street checks/carding? I personally feel that question should have said, have you heard of Jermaine Carby? Because a lot of you guys who know Jermaine Carby, he died because of this carding practice. If you don't believe me, there's paperwork that talks about it. Police shooting of Jermaine Carby began with carding, officer testifies at Jermaine Carby's inquest. So Jermaine was carded 5 minutes from his house and lost his life because he went to get Burger King, okay? Number 2, what do street checks/carding mean to you? Pursuant to Section 9 of the Charter of Rights and Freedom, it means arbitrary detention. And that's probably why they made this new regulation, because they realized that they were arbitrarily detaining people and violating our charter rights. So if you have a regulation and it violates our charter rights, the charter will always take precedent. So I'm not sure why this practice is still happening when it's arbitrary detention. You stop someone, you're not telling them why, you're not giving them a right to counsel. These things shouldn't be happening. Number 4, we don't feel that people know enough about this. We feel that this should be inside bus shelters, bus sheds. When you go on the subway and you're sitting there waiting for your stop, you should be able to read about it. High school teachers should be giving this out. This should be at community centers. You're hiding information that we should know, but then you expect us to know. It makes no sense. Do we feel that this has a benefit to the community? No. It's causing mental health on some of our young black men, because if you're constantly being harassed, constantly being, like racially profiled, it's gonna take an effect on your mental state at some point. Even when you're not detained, you still feel psychologically detained, because no one's like, these little stupid rules now that you have, they make no sense that, you can tell, hey, by the way, you don't have to give me your information. Is a black young man or any type of person that's not Caucasian going to feel comfortable to exercise their rights on a dark street or a back alley, knowing what could happen? No, they're not. You shouldn't be talking to them in the first place. It says that you should only, I guess they could only do it when they have some type of investigative purpose, but Constable Senechil admitted that he had no investigative reason to ask Jermaine Carby for his personal information. My cousin was a passenger of a car, okay? So the driver gets pulled over, they took the driver's license, insurance, registration, everything was fine. They even administered a breathalyzer test and everything was fine. Once the traffic stop is complete, you have no right to talk to the passenger. If they did not talk to the passenger, my cousin would be here today. So this practice, every time I'm at a family gathering or a Christmas dinner, I don't see my cousin because of this practice, because of this idiot that allows this practice to happen. Yes, your chief. I said it, she's an idiot, because if you're gonna allow people to be arbitrarily detained to the point where they lose their life and it's still happening, you guys obviously don't get it. And the only time that they should be stopping you is when they live in the community. If they have no vested interest in the community, why would they even care to talk to someone in the community? You're just harassing us. You come and harass us, and then you go and live in Barrie, where we don't have to see you at a grocery store, where you can actually feel like you have to be accountable for your actions the day before. I'm sure if you lived next door, you wouldn't be harassing people because you would be fearing for your life, which they always say they feared for their life. I'm sorry, if you have a gun at your waist and someone is unarmed and you feel for a life, maybe this profession is not for you because you're a coward. I get so upset when I think about the fact of carding, and I'm at a couple of these meetings saying the same thing, because a lot of people still don't know Jermaine Carby lost his life because he was a passenger. You know why? Because the TV will say, known criminal shot by police. So they don't say that he was arbitrarily detained. They bring up his past to justify why they killed him. So this practice should be stopped. There shouldn't be no regulation. Half of this stuff contradicts itself, and it really upsets me that I lost my cousin 5 minutes from his house, on his way to get Burger King, because an officer that didn't even pull them over originally, an officer that arrived on the scene for 4 minutes, had no idea what was happening, shot my cousin 3 times. Should this have happened? No. But do we do anything about it? No. And then what do they do next to try to cover themselves? Plant a knife that wasn't originally found on the scene. If he's coming at them with a knife while they felt they had to shoot him, even though they bothered him while he was sitting in the passenger seat quietly, and then all of a sudden a knife came about that wasn't found on the scene, do you guys not see what's happening? Like, police lie. Police harass us. Police take advantage of us because they feel they have power, and you guys allow it by continuing this stupid practice. Like, I have nothing else to say. I don't know what else my table has to say, but I'm sure I covered enough.
Thank you. Next table. Thank you.
Just a little appending to what my sister just said. The officer also admitted
Sorry,
that...
sir. Sir, can you report back on what your table discussed as opposed to the specificity, as opposed to the specificities of the...
I'm just putting what we said in context. You said don't repeat what
We
was said
understand each
before.
other.
Okay, then. Yeah.
We understand each other, right, sir?
Okay, can you give me back my minutes that you just...
We understand each other, right?
Okay, thank you.
you.
Yeah. So the officer said that he was conducting the street checks to create a record of interaction to put cabbies' information in a police database. What is that? See, that's the problem. And somebody just alluded to that before. You know, that creates all sort of problems for somebody, right? That's an innocent person. That's targeting people, right? There's no use for this. So what I think we also have to have, and that's absent, I don't see it anyway, accountability, right? If I'm speeding, there's an interaction with me and the cops. He's going to give me a ticket, and the ticket is going to see what's the offense and what's the fine. The same thing should happen to the police officer. When those police officer violates our right, there must be a penalty that is measured according to the level of the violation. This is absent. So what we're living here, we're living in the same conditions of those juntas we talk about, right? We are constitutional juntas because we do certain people anything that we want. The people that we don't consider, we do them anything that we want, and we have immunity. That's what happens in those places that we condemn. You know, you look at the news and you hear about this dictator and stuff like that. This is happening in Canada. Canada is no different. So I'm hearing people saying that sometimes we talk like we're defeated. What we need to do is to come together and, you know, talk to people around you. You see, I came with all those things. I copied it all myself. The judge told me I am not permitted to distribute it, so I'm not distributing it. But if you ask me for one when I'm outside, you can get one, right? Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, then.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
A table that hasn't gone? Thank you.
That's a lot of people. Hi, my name is Xavier Stephenson. I'm not with no organization. I'm just a normal person. I can look at this and mostly go through everything, but I got a story I can say. One day I went to the gym and I was minding my own business. I went work out, and it was a good workout too. And I was walking back home, and I had two police officers stop me and ask me questions. They said I look like someone. They didn't say what for or anything. I just answered their questions. I didn't want any conflict between us or anything. I don't recognize the police officers either. I gave them what they wanted. They kept on asking questions that didn't matter in the 24-hour hour that they wanted to talk, or where the crime was happening. And I'm thinking in my head why are you still asking me questions if it's not even relevant to what you're looking into or anything? And why am I still sitting here, and when I'm at home, it's 5 minutes away, that I'm still answering your questions when they don't even matter to what you're trying to investigate, which doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm thinking, what's going through this police officer's head that he has to keep asking me these questions? I don't know anything about him. He doesn't know anything about me, but yet he will still try to find something or find a connection to put me in the car. Now, I don't know how to do his job, and he doesn't know how I live. Simple as that. But even from my table, my dad's been stopped by a police officer. These young gentlemen's been stopped by a police officer. Maybe it's been different because of what they look like, or maybe not. But why is it that when I'm stopped by a police officer, I'm totally scared. I haven't seen this guy around, haven't seen him around the place, haven't seen him around my city. It's just a guy that lives down in Timbuktu or anything, and I don't know nothing about him. Personally, for me, I don't know, I think my table can agree with this. I personally think they should have police officers that know around Brampton or know around their city. And the ones that they can connect with, one that they connect to the people that's saying, oh, I see someone walking down, I don't know who this guy is. I want to say oh, he goes, I know where he goes, I know what school, I know stuff about him, where it's safe to me saying, oh, hey, yeah, this is what I was doing, not to be freezing there and be so no, I want to actually connect. Now, I don't want to be interrogated. I want to talk to a person. I want to actually be speaking to a person. A police officer shouldn't be looking at me like a cripple. I should be saying, hey, I'm a person, you're a person, let's talk. I shouldn't be scared. I should be very easily just talking normally. Even this lady was saying she had an ex that was a police officer, and when he started, he was all fine. A couple months ago, what they teach him in the facility, everything, he's acting different. What makes what they're teaching the police officers so different, where they can't even connect to the human race, their own people, where they're coming from, where you should be like, hey, this is my brother, this is my sister. Why is it so different now from what you've learned from law that you can't say, hey, okay, you're just like me, there's nothing different. You don't seem that bad. I don't know anything about you. Why can't I just talk to you? Why do I have to go and throw away I like to talk to this person for, okay, I gotta follow the rules. Personally, I would think if you're gonna be a police officer, you should know that you don't always have to be threatening. You don't always have to be this. You only should be threatening when, there's a threat at hand. Other than that, I think, okay, you're not my family, you're not nothing, but you're still a person, and I don't know you. So let's get to know each other. Let's sit down and get to know each other. In my school, we have police officers in my school. I'm not scared of them. They know me. They know I go to the school. I've even had one drop by my classroom and say, oh, hi. Well, scare off my other kids, but me, it's just normal. Because I know him on that level. Does everyone else know that I was getting scared? No. So why can't police officers stop and say hi to us? Why do they always have to be? Why do they have to be in their cars in the back alleyways, waiting for us, waiting for speeders, or anything? Why can't they be a part of the community? The community is what is going to build everything. I don't know about you, but if they're willing to do it, I'm willing to do it too. And if we're not all willing to step forward together, we're not going to get anything done. Am I right or am I right?
Thank you.
Okay?
Do you want to do this table then? Did this table go? This table right in front of them? Just because Dave's on this side of the room? Thank you.
Full disclosure, that's my son. We're not on, right? One thing that was interesting about that stop for us with him is that he actually tried to call his dad and I together, and we were concerned because there were numerous messages because we've always told him connect with us. And so we had to have another deep conversation. We've always had conversations with him, but we had to have another deep conversation again. This is what you do. Make sure you take this. Make sure you remain, and so on. And one thing that was interesting to me with that connection is that it counteracted the connections he had with the police officers previously, because he had very positive experiences with police officers to the point where they were recommending him for going into programs to become a police officer. But when he was randomly stopped and carded, that really changed his perception. And understand that that's what it's done. And in talking in our group, we looked at number 2, which was, what do street check carding mean to you? And words like intimidating, scary, confusing, random, that they feel the need to protect themselves or individuals such as children or youth and so on. I don't think that should be the goal, that we should want to be creating that kind of climate or connection. And then we can keep going on, but I think at the end, our table talked about words of communication, ongoing, building connection and relationship. And that really, that carding should not be the focus, but rather building a community and building relationships. So making that shift from that. Those are the big things. Whether the community was not given much awareness of this at all. It just slid right in. This is probably a surprise. I'm sure if you walked on the street and you ask anybody right now, they'll go, huh, what, when, why? They don't know. The people in here who are speaking right now are the ones that are taking initiative and so on. But as for those people who it does affect daily and all the time, it does not, and so on. My group, I'd like to invite you to share. You had really good connections as well that you'd wanted.
You have about a minute, sir.
Sure.
Thank you.
Ahmed Gaid from the Ontario Federation of Labor. I want to preface what I want to say by saying that you can't improve the practice of carding. It's just got to be eliminated. And as my sister told you, that we have to focus on building communities and building relationships, having police officers interact in the community is a better way to focus their attention rather than randomly stopping individuals in the streets, and I put that in quotes. Even the way the questionnaire, for example, is phrased. When should police stop and talk to people in the community? And that comes under police stops. They're not stopping to talk to anybody. They are stopping individuals to collect information, to find out where they're going, who they're talking to, where they're coming from. Even number 7, what obligation should police have when they stop and talk to people? They're not stopping to talk to anybody. So like the premise of the actual questions, I think this questionnaire needs to be changed maybe for your upcoming meetings, because it's making it sound like carding is actually something friendly, something that a tool they're using to engage communities. It's being used to control communities. Many of us have been carded maybe here in the room, and we know what the interaction is like. It's intimidating, it's scary. A lot of times you don't know where your information is going. Some of us like, for example, traveling to other countries. Who are they sharing the information to? Why am I being denied at borders and not given a reason there? Is it because some of the information is being shared with other agencies and other countries and their agencies, and we are being controlled in those ways as well? The information being collected needs to be halted. The historical information needs to be deleted and wiped out permanently. And I can go on and on and on, but I don't know if anybody else wants to speak, and I don't know where the moderator is.
And David is right there. Okay. All right. Sure.
Hi there. My name is Amik Bali with United 6.
Sir, can I ask you to hold the microphone closer?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Amik Bali, and I'm with United 6. The key points that I kind of noticed throughout the meeting tonight, the point of schooling was brought up. So when police foundation courses are made throughout universities and colleges on Ontario, is the racial bias aspect discussed in those courses, and how is that implemented when it comes to understanding that when policing is done? Accountability. Every other profession has some sort of research done saying, oh, well, these are the set and procedures that we did, and these are the outcomes of said procedures. If there is no positive effect of the policies currently in place, why are we still implementing them? That question should be asked. Secondly, the research should be done independently. That is not associated with any affiliation, and the science should speak for itself. Policing within the community, constantly heard that theme. So if the police officers that serve within the community have a better idea of what the community is like, because they're part of that community. So representation of the police officers that serve in your division, that live in your division, or at least in your city, know the experiences of the youth and the people that live within the city. And the implementation of these practices, lastly, should be researched and debated if they're having a positive effect. If they are not, they should not be continued forward because the science suggests it does not have the effect.
Thank you. Dave, I think this table, you guys ready? Thank you.
I won't belabor what everybody else has already said. Juliet Jackson, Region of Peel. But just to maybe kind of summarize some of the themes that we talked about that have been touched on. Bias is a huge one. At the end of the day, all of the government systems that exist in this country are based on keeping those who are racialized, impoverished, basically. And that needs to be changed. But with this system specifically, the impact could result in death. So we can't afford to ignore it. Something has to change. We have to make sense of how we begin to shift the system. It's not about just the individuals and whether or not they're good guys or good people or good whatever. It's about how we make sure we begin to change what that system represents, and it needs to have an anti-oppression lens. We need to move forward with shifting what people do, how they look at the biases that they absolutely do have, which result in judgment, which result in informing the reasons why they actually stop people. So we have to change that. In terms of our young black men, the hardest thing to be on this planet, as far as I'm concerned right now, is a young black man. And if they keep feeling that they're always under suspicion, it's just like treating someone like an animal. Eventually, they become exactly what you are accusing them of becoming. And that's what's happening with our youth. It is breaking their confidence. It is changing them. It is forcing them in a position where they move forward in life with mistrust. They don't trust anyone, any system, and they barely trust themselves. And we can't afford for that to continue to happen with our youth, so something has to change. Accountability, I'm just going to touch on that again. If every time someone is carded, their name goes into the system, and that affects their ability to actually secure a viable job, somebody has to be held accountable for that. We cannot allow our youth to be put in a position where they go to school, they get educated, they do everything right, but for absolutely no reason, they're painted as criminals. And somehow that prevents their ability to actually grow up, have a family, and support that family. That is part of the systematic racism that exists that must end.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Good evening, everybody. The name is Brian Boydoku. I represent upliftedbeing.com. You can check it out. What I really wanted to ask everybody in here, because the law, it protects all of us. And what I wanted to ask is how do we use the law to protect ourselves? I personally, I've had more than a couple interactions with police. I've been stopped, searched, carded. To me, it's unjustifiable. It's a violation of rights. But in a more recent incident, when I asked the police for their identification, for their badge and their business card, they provided their badge, their identification. But when I said business card, it's like they started to trip. They, panicked and stuff. And it's like, when it comes to accountability, it's like we have to empower ourselves with the law so we can hold them accountable. If we don't know the law and how we could use it to our benefit, how do we defend ourselves? That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there a table that I did not get? Oh, the back middle table. That's right. Thank you. Thank you. And they're ready now.
Hello, my name is Ray Stevens. So basically we just have a general discussion. So I'll just go through the questions as they are. The first question is, have you heard of street checks or carding? And unanimously around the table, we all heard of it. What do you think it means? We feel like it's discriminatory, but in most interactions, it's not necessary. We feel like approach matters. So a lot of times it's how the police officer approached the individual, and what is the reason for the interaction. We feel like it's racially biased. Racial bias are formed, and some are justified, some aren't. We talked about policing in the neighborhood. We feel like it should be community policing, where police from the neighborhood are actually working in the same neighborhood that they live, only because for the most part they don't really know the community, and we're all human, and there's a lot of racial bias when it comes to individuals. The third one says, are you aware of the new regulation around the table? I think no one knew exactly what it was except for the mayor. But for the most part, we didn't know exactly what it was. So we've heard of it, but we didn't know what it was. The fifth one says, do you think checks and carding have any benefits? For the most part, yes, we feel like it might have some benefits, but it's how it's done. And again, because of racial biases and all these things, it's a lot of times it's not done correctly. When should we be stopped? We felt like we should be able to interact with the police all the time, not just when something happened or they're trying to investigate. We felt like the community policing should be something that happens where police should be able to communicate with community, and just to be human, as the young man says. Number 7 says, what obligation should police have when they stop you? We feel like they should be polite. Mutual respect should be there. It should be clear and concise. Give the detail for the interactions. And I believe that's the last questions that we got to.
Thank you. Did we get everyone? Okay. Hi. 1 second.
Hi, thanks. I wanted to wait until the very end, until everyone got an opportunity to give their input. I just want to, you've been talking about retention of carding information and stuff like that, and I just want you to know that I've been filing freedom of information on street checks for Peel Police, and there is things that you need to know. And I just want to read this.
Sure.
At the September 25th, 2015 Peel Police Services Board meeting, Peel Police tabled a report to the board called Street Check Process. One part of the report dealt with retention of street check personal information. And the report says street checks records, quote, are typically retained on an indefinite basis unless statutory requirements dictate otherwise. And an environmental scan with surrounding agencies revealed that information collected through street check processes is also retained indefinitely. And it's written to have the reader conclude that Peel Police retain street check records permanently. Freedom of Information confirmed that's not true. Peel Police street check personal information has a precise erase directive as dictated by the Force's 2005 records retention schedule. So if you or someone you know were carded by Peel Police and that interaction resulted in no charges, your street check form information should have been erased 1 year after your carding event. Even if you were charged, your street check form information should have been erased 5 years after it all cleared the courts. So they shouldn't have been keeping that information for the majority of their street checks. They should have been erased a year after the event in case of no charges. On November 18th, 2016, Chief Evans told the board that so far Peel Police had restricted 24,000 street check documents, that's your personal information, and still had 74,469 street check records to restrict. And by restrict, that means permanently, to keep them permanently. That's 98,469 people now permanently in the Peel Police database. And I have questions. You're not going to answer them, but I said I could ask questions. Questions: how many of those 98,500 street check personal information now restricted by Peel Police should have been erased, according to that 2005 records retention schedule? And now that Peel Police finally has fixed the chronic problems with their niche computer system, which Freedom of Information revealed, what is the real Peel Police street check breakdown by race of the 98,500 people that the chief restricted? And also, somebody mentioned youth. What's the breakdown by race of youth carded and restricted by Peel Police starting at, say, age 8? How many 8 years old? Oh, how many 9-year-olds? How many 10-year-olds? That's not an unrealistic question. Also, by far the most troubling issue of all is that Freedom of Information has shown that the percent of black people carded by Peel Police is not the 20.7%, that is about 1 in 5 that the force reported to the board back in September 2015, but extends beyond 30%, making it about 1 in every 3 street check reports, street check.
Can I ask you to wrap up in 20 seconds? Thank you.
No, not 20 seconds. Also, there was a secret street check report. I will, to be fast, they write, there are risks associated with the collection of information that include the potential of accusation of discrimination or bias on behalf of police. They also write, this is vitally important when special interest groups and or the media obtain race data on police stops and then do their own analysis, and they've got that in sort of the air quotes. Also, they write later in this report that this type of data, meaning race data, will lead to problems through misinterpretation by special interest groups and the media. And they also write, this one I love, this is the author writing this and says, quote, as a side note, if PRP collect the data, meaning the race data, the statistics, it is potentially subject to release through FOI application, and from there subject to misinterpretation and misuse by special interest groups and media. They are very afraid of special interest groups, more than anything else. And I guess the one...
Can I ask you to wrap up? And the last thing, can I just ask you to, for the record, just state what you're reading? Like, what is that document?
That document is called, it's a 2014, it was called Street Check Board Report. Around October, it was not meant, even though it was called Street Check Board Report, it was actually a report for the Peel Police brass, primarily Chief Evans and Deputy Chief McCord.
Okay.
And I got it through fighting. They fought 2 years for it not to be released.
Thank you.
Okay.
Davey said there's one more person? Yep. We'll take that. Thank you. Oh, you know what? So sorry. Just as a point of process, and that this is now the 5th of these consultations, we do usually 1 per table. So this is going to be 3 just for your table, if I allow you to speak, sir. Has it not been covered? I don't mean to. Okay, thank you. And time number 2 for that table, and then that's it. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dwight Campbell. I'm just, I guess, concerned citizen, so to say. But as we say, like in the West Indies, who feels it knows it. Mm-hmm. Obviously, as a young black male, I can personally speak to street checks and the impact that it's had on my life, and I can definitely say that from at least the ages of, let's say, 12 to about 18. My friends and I, for example, would be walking home from like the YMCA playing basketball, not bothering anyone, minding our own business. And typically you'd have these set of police officers who, while they're, I guess, doing their rounds, would typically stop you regularly, you know? Now, we weren't doing anything, and, but nonetheless, all these interactions were actually recorded or what have you. So now if myself or any of my group of friends who are walking home, you know, get into any sort of suspicious activity, the first thing they're going to say is, or if something even happens to us, they're going to say that we were known to police. And everyone knows the implication that that statement even has. In addition, I think there was a good point that someone mentioned when they said that it's very important that officers from the community, officers actually serve the community that they're from, because then they actually have a vested interest in actually improving the conditions. Lastly, I just want to say that I studied and I did my undergrad in northern Alabama, right? Which a lot of people would view as being quote unquote like, a racist area, so to speak. But in all honesty, I have to say that I find Canada to be even more racist than America. And the reason being is that at least, like, the analogy that I'll make is at least Canada and the US, they're like two alcoholics, so to say. Let's say that I drink 4 bottles every single day and you drink 2, right? America, at least, they have the mindset where they're saying, you know what, I have an issue, you know what I'm saying, I'm racist. They don't deny it whatsoever. However, in Canada, we live under this naive umbrella of multiculturalism, and we say at least we're not like the States, and we, as a result, we never really seek to really improve anything. At the last, thank you. At the last meeting that we were at, what was it, about 2 years ago?
Sir, you have 1 minute, okay?
Yeah, that's
Thank
right.
you.
Yeah, the oversight meeting that we were at roughly about, 2 years ago, we were speaking about these same sort of things, and 2 years later, we're still talking about it. It's just become a very redundant thing. Like, they still are not employing more people that are reflective of the community. Brampton is still 2/3 a visible minority, but the police force, even the city councils and whatnot, are not reflective of that. And it's just poor. It's very pathetic when they say that they're actually talking about making changes, but then they'll sprinkle one person with a turban and one black woman on a council team or whatnot, and then say that that's change or that's diversity. It's sickening. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to thank everyone. Thank you. I want to just say, on behalf of the team, Justice Tulloch? Justice Tulloch? Justice Tulloch? Is that fine? Thank you. Sorry, I didn't see you before, sir. Go ahead.
That's okay. Good evening, everybody. So I came pretty late, so I didn't get to partake in the whole the activities that were happening around the table. But I want to thank my man Victor for calling me out, and everybody that put this together. My name is Jada Man. I'm from Toronto. We've been working in the community for many years. I'm an artist. A lot of young people, seen a lot of things in my lifetime, experienced a lot of things with the officers, my family, especially. So a lot of things have already been said, right? So what I want to say is, it just baffles me that we're here. Like, I've been seeing this for years about the carding piece. I've seen it in the Toronto Star. I'm seeing it everywhere. And it baffles me that we're still here trying to figure out how to make this thing pretty and how to keep it going. You know what I'm saying? It's like we're in a democratic society. We're not even just a democratic society. We're in Canada, right? Social inclusion, anti-oppression, like we live on these things, right? So one of the main reasons we're here is because a particular demographic of our society has had issues, challenges, barriers, life-changing experiences with the carding system. Now, if you're holding forums and these people are saying it doesn't work in high numbers and we don't want it, I think it's the government's responsibility and as a best practice, and as my man said right here, you abolish it. You wipe it out, and if you think it has impacts that can't be recreated in another format for the police, you run a pilot with new ways of doing it with a smaller demographic and test it out over time. But the majority is saying, get rid of it. Why are we still here talking about this? I don't understand. And that's just coming from a young man from the streets, and I'm feeling it, and we're feeling it, and I'm seeing what my young people are talking about. And I've heard from the older guys that came before me, right? It's just that right now we're in a time where, globally, people have awakened, right? And then there's social media and whatnot. So, lastly, to the government, do what you got to do. The public has spoken. The communities that have been immensely impacted by this have spoken. The ball's in your court, and that's what I want to say.
Thank you. I just want to offer some closing words before Justice Tulloch closes the night out. It is not lost on the team that having these conversations is challenging and personally difficult for people and painful oftentimes. And we just want to acknowledge that and say thank you again for being here and for your participation and for your engagement with this conversation, because we know it's not easy. So thank you for that. I just want to remind you of our social media platforms as well as the website, and the idea that if you have more to say, we are interested in what you have to say, and you can submit it using our website, www.streetchecksreview.ca. And also you can encourage people that you know to participate by doing that. If you would check the website, you would see that we have another set of meetings or more meetings to follow. And if you know people in Ottawa, if you know people in Windsor, et cetera, if you would reach out and encourage them to have their voices heard. As I said before, we cannot report on what we do not hear. So this is why it's so important for high engagement, or for you to encourage people that you know to come out and be heard. I think that's it for me. Justice Tulloch, last words? Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank you, Kike, again, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming out. Thank you for speaking and for letting us hear your experiences and your thoughts. I want to just reiterate that I'm not the government, again. I'm not here on behalf of the police either. I'm here as an independent reviewer. I'm a judge. I sit on the Court of Appeal. And so I'm looking at this regulation that the government implemented in an independent and very comprehensive way to see, whether or not it addresses the intent for which it was implemented. I've heard you very loud and clear, and frankly, I want to acknowledge each and every one of your experiences. And as Kike has indicated, I too share her sentiments that I know it is very difficult for a lot of you to relate some of your own experiences. I heard that young man, the 16-year-old, and the impact of these kinds of interactions are long-lasting, and we've heard that they have, in many ways, a lot of mental and psychological long-standing implications. And these are difficult, and it's difficult for not only the people that are experiencing them, but their families and as well as their communities. And, I will reflect that in this report. So I want you to know that I've heard you loud and clear, and we'll do the best that we can to reflect your message. Thank you.
And with that, we thank you and say good night and get home safely.